The night Valera Nytheris was born, the sky bled. A crimson eclipse hung over the kingdom of Valkyrian like a divine wound, bathing the ancient spires and moonlit forests in shades of blood and shadow. The air itself hummed with power. In the sacred birthing chamber of the House of Nytheris, the royal seers gathered around the cradle, their faces pale with awe and terror. 3 celestial wolf spirits materialized above the newborn princess, massive, ethereal beings of pure starlight and ancient fury. One was wreathed in darkness that swallowed light. The second blazed with celestial fire and shimmering runes. The third pulsed with threads of fate and silver prophecy. They circled the infant once, twice, then dove into her tiny body like falling stars. A collective gasp swept through the chamber. One old seer, her voice trembling with the weight of 10,000 years of prophecy, stepped forward and declared, "She is the Tri-Soul, the one who carries 3 wolf souls. She will either save our world or bring about its utter destruction." King Dravor Nytheris, Valera's father, stood motionless, his powerful frame rigid with fear. He ordered the truth buried deep. Only a handful of elders would ever know the dangerous secret hidden inside his daughter, Nyxeris, the shadow wolf of darkness and secrets. Solveris, the celestial wolf of light and ancient magic. Falarin, the spirit wolf of fate and prophecy. As the years passed, the kingdom waited for a miracle that never came. Valera grew into a quiet, ethereal beauty. Her hair fell like liquid midnight with faint, iridescent threads that caught moonlight like scattered stars. Her eyes held a haunting amber gold depth, but she could not shift. She displayed none of the extraordinary strength or magic expected of royal blood. The court whispered cruelly behind her back, "The princess is weak, a disappointment to the bloodline." Perhaps the prophecy was wrong. Valera bore the whispers with quiet dignity, but inside, loneliness carved deep wounds into her soul. Then came the Festival of Moons, the most sacred night in the entire realm. Under a sky blazing with 1,000 lanterns and the light of the full moon, the moon goddess herself revealed Valera's fated mate, King Kadros Valor, the ruthless and legendary ruler of the Iron Fang Dominion. Kadros was everything a king should be, towering, broad-shouldered, with sharp silver-gray eyes that could freeze blood and a presence that commanded obedience. He had crushed enemy packs, forged alliances through fear and respect, and built an empire of iron and claw. He expected a mate who burned as brightly as he did, a warrior queen, a powerful Luna. Instead, he received Valera. The moment their eyes met across the sacred circle, the bond ignited. But when his wolf revealed that Valera's wolves remained completely dormant, Kadros's expression turned to stone. Ambitious nobles whispered poison into his ears. The court watched with hungry eyes. Pride and fear won. On that fateful night, before the gathered kings, queens, and pack leaders of the entire realm, King Kadros Valor publicly rejected his fated mate. His voice rang out cold and merciless across the festival grounds. "I, King Kadros Valor of the Iron Fang Dominion, reject Valera Nytheris as my mate. She is no true Luna. She is a disgrace to our kind, weak, powerless, and unworthy of the throne. I banish her beyond the Valewood expanse. Let her never return to these lands." Gasps and murmurs erupted like thunder. Valera stood frozen, her heart shattering into pieces as the mate bond cracked violently inside her chest. Pain, unlike anything she had ever known, flooded her body. She looked at her father. King Dravor's face was carved with regret, but he remained silent. No one dared challenge the Alpha King's decree. With silent tears streaming down her face, Valera turned and walked away from everything she had ever known. Away from her home, her title, her people, and the man the moon goddess had chosen for her. She vanished into the cursed Valewood expanse, a wilderness of twisted trees, poisonous mists, and ancient dangers from which few exiles ever returned. Broken, alone, forgotten. But the moon goddess had not abandoned her most precious daughter. Deep within the forbidden wilderness stood the ruined temple of Etherion, the last place where the goddess's magic still lingered strongly. There, beneath the light of another blood moon, the seals her father had placed upon her at birth finally shattered. For the first time in her life, Valera heard them. Nyxeris opened his eyes, then Solvaris, then Thaloran. The triple soul wolves awakened, and the rejected Luna began her true destiny. Meanwhile, far away in the Iron Fang Dominion, darkness stirred. A forgotten enemy known only as the Void Sovereign began tearing open rifts between worlds, threatening to devour every pack and kingdom. Only then would King Kadros learn the devastating truth. The woman he had banished was not weak. She was the last Tri-Soul, the prophesied Queen of Three Wolves, and the only one who could save their world. By the time he sought her forgiveness, it would be too late for easy redemption. The Alpha King would have to beg. The Valewood Expanse did not welcome the banished. As soon as Valera Nytheris crossed the ancient boundary stones, the world changed. The air grew heavier, thick with the scent of damp rot and distant thunder. Towering trees twisted upward like the claws of long-dead giants, their black bark glistening with poisonous sap. Fog clung to the ground in eerie sheets, swallowing sound and light alike. Valera walked for hours, or perhaps days. Time lost meaning beneath the suffocating canopy. Her once elegant festival gown, now torn and muddied, offered little protection against the biting wind that howled between the trees. Her feet, bare after she lost her silk slippers in the undergrowth, bled with every step. Hunger gnawed at her like a living beast. She had not eaten since the morning before the festival. Her throat burned with thirst, but every stream she found carried the metallic tang of something unnatural. She drank anyway, desperate enough to risk poison. On the third night, or was it the fourth, she collapsed against the roots of a colossal ironwood tree. The rough bark scraped her back as she slid down, too exhausted to care. Silent tears carved clean paths through the dirt on her face. "Why?" she whispered into the darkness. "What did I ever do to deserve this?" Memories flooded her, unbidden and merciless. She remembered being a small child in the royal gardens of Velcarion. Other pups her age shifted effortlessly into playful wolf forms, chasing each other under the moonlight. Valera had tried again and again, squeezing her eyes shut, willing her body to change. Nothing ever happened. The other children laughed. "Broken princess," they called her when the adults weren't listening. Her father, King Dravor, had watched her with a mixture of love and deep disappointment. He never spoke the truth aloud, but she felt it in every heavy silence between them. Then came King Kadros Valor. Their first meeting had been months before the festival, a diplomatic visit between kingdoms. Valera had been sent to deliver a message in the Great Hall. When she entered, Kadros had looked up from his war table, and for one breathless moment, the entire world had narrowed to just the two of them. He had been magnificent, towering, commanding. Yet when he spoke to her, his voice had softened in a way no one else ever witnessed. Over the following weeks, stolen conversations in moonlit corridors and shared rides through the forest had slowly kindled something dangerous in her heart. She had fallen in love with him. Not with the ruthless Alpha King the world feared, but with the male who had quietly asked about her favorite constellations, who had listened when she spoke of old legends, and who had once brushed a stray lock of her midnight hair behind her ear with surprising gentleness. "I have waited many years for you," he had murmured one night, his silver-gray eyes glowing with promise. And she had believed him. Now that same male had cast her away like refuse before the entire realm. The memory of his cold rejection sliced through her again, sharper than any thorn in the Vale wood. Valera curled into herself, sobbing until her voice grew hoarse. The mate bond, that beautiful golden thread the moon goddess had woven between them, now felt like barbed wire wrapped around her soul. Days blurred together in a haze of suffering. She learned to set crude snares with vines and sharpened stones, but most of her catches escaped. She ate bitter roots and strange berries that left her stomach cramping. Once, a pack of feral shadow beasts, twisted creatures corrupted by the Valewood's dark magic, hunted her through the mist. She barely escaped by climbing a tree, her arms shaking violently as the monsters snarled and clawed at the trunk below. Every night, the despair grew heavier. Perhaps this is where I die, she thought bitterly. Forgotten, unmourned, a weak princess who never deserved her title. But something else was stirring. At first, it was only faint, a whisper at the very edge of her mind when she hovered between sleep and waking. A low growl that vibrated through her bones, a brush of warm fur against her consciousness, even though no physical wolf lay beside her. Then came the dreams. In them, she ran through endless forests on powerful paws. 3 distinct presences flanked her, one dark as midnight, one blazing like starfire, and one shimmering with threads of silver destiny. They did not speak in words, but she felt their emotions. Protect, endure, awaken. One particularly cold dawn, as Valera huddled beneath a rocky overhang trying to warm her frozen hands, she felt the first true sign. Her vision sharpened dramatically. She could suddenly see every vein in the leaves above her, every tiny insect crawling across the moss. Her hearing expanded. She caught the distant trickle of water she had missed for days. And for one fleeting moment, her amber gold eyes flashed with an inner light. Nyxeris. The shadow wolf had brushed against her soul, testing the strength of his vessel. Valera gasped, clutching her chest. The sensation vanished as quickly as it came, leaving her trembling. What are you?" she whispered into the empty forest. Only silence answered. But deep inside, something ancient was waking up. And the Valewood, for the first time since she entered it, almost seemed to hold its breath. The Valewood seemed determined to break Valera Nyxeris. After what felt like an eternity of wandering, her body aching, her spirit frayed to its limits, a strange pull began guiding her steps. It was not a voice, not yet. Only a faint tugging in her chest, like an invisible thread tied to her heart. Weak as she was, she followed it. She had nothing else left. The trees grew even older here, their trunks carved with faint, glowing runes that pulsed weakly in the perpetual twilight. The air hummed with latent magic. Valera's bare, bleeding feet carried her forward until the forest suddenly opened into a vast clearing. Before her rose the ruined temple of Etherion. Once a grand sanctuary dedicated to the moon goddess, the temple now stood as a majestic skeleton of its former glory. Massive marble columns, cracked and overgrown with luminescent vines, reached toward the sky like the ribs of a fallen giant. Shattered stained glass windows depicting ancient wolf deities littered the ground in glittering shards. At the center, a broken dome allowed shafts of moonlight to pierce the gloom, illuminating a circular altar still radiating faint divine energy. Valera stumbled forward, drawn by an irresistible force. As she crossed the threshold, a wave of warmth washed over her chilled skin. For the first time since her banishment, she felt safe. She collapsed at the foot of the great altar, her midnight hair spilling across the cold stone like ink. Exhaustion claimed her almost instantly, and the dreams began. In the dream realm, she stood in an endless field of silver grass beneath 3 moons. 3 massive wolves approached her. The first was pure shadow, Nyxaris, his form shifting and blending with darkness, eyes glowing like twin amethysts. His voice slithered into her mind like smoke. "We have waited so very long, little vessel." The second blazed with celestial light, Sulvaris, his fur shimmering with living constellations. His voice rang clear and warm. "The seals weaken. Feel us. Remember us." The third, Falarin, appeared wreathed in threads of silver fate, his eyes ancient and knowing. "The path of prophecy unfolds. You are not weak. You were only sleeping." Valera woke with a gasp, her heart hammering. The temple was silent, yet she could still feel them. 3 distinct presences circling inside her soul, patient but growing stronger. She spent the next several days in the ruins, using the temple as shelter. She discovered a hidden spring of pure water behind the altar and strange glowing fruits that grew along the vines, sweet, nourishing, and healing. Her physical wounds began to close faster than natural, but it was the voices that both comforted and terrified her. At night, they spoke more clearly. Nyxaris taught her how to move silently, how to blend with shadows. She practiced for hours, learning to step without sound. Sulvaris whispered ancient spells of light and healing, guiding her hands until faint sparks danced between her fingers. Falarin showed her glimpses of possible futures, fragmented visions of war, rifts tearing the sky, and a towering Alpha King on his knees. "Kadros," she whispered one evening, tears falling as she traced a faded carving of the moon goddess. "Why did you cast me away?" The wolves did not answer her pain, but their presence grew warmer, as if offering silent strength. Meanwhile, far beyond the Valewood, in the grand halls of the Ironfang Dominion, tension thickened the air. King Kadros Valor sat upon his throne of black iron and wolfbone, his silver-gray eyes stormy. The great hall was filled with his most trusted generals and advisors. Maps and reports lay scattered across the war table. A scout, bloodied and exhausted, knelt before him. "Your Majesty," the scout rasped, "the rifts are spreading. 3 new ones opened near the eastern borders this week. Shadow creatures unlike anything we've seen are pouring through. Creatures with no scent, no soul. Villages have been swallowed whole." Murmurs of fear rippled through the hall. Another advisor stepped forward, an elderly shaman with trembling hands. "Sire, the old scrolls speak of the Void Sovereign, an ancient enemy banished by the moon goddess herself during the Great War 10,000 years ago. If the rifts continue to widen, he will consume every pack on this continent." Kadros gripped the arms of his throne until the iron creaked. His mind flashed unwillingly to Valera, the quiet princess he had rejected so publicly. He pushed the thought away with a growl. "Send more patrols," he commanded, his voice like grinding stone. "Double the border guards, and find out what is causing these rifts. I will not allow some forgotten ghost to threaten my dominion." Yet as the meeting ended and Kadros retired to his private chambers, he could not shake a growing unease. For the first time in years, he found himself staring at the moon through his window, remembering the way Valera's amber gold eyes had looked at him with trust before he shattered her. Deep in the Temple of Etherian, Valera suddenly sat upright. For the first time, the 3 wolves spoke in perfect unison inside her mind. "He is coming. The king who rejected us will soon seek what he threw away." A powerful surge of energy coursed through her veins. Her eyes flashed, one moment amber, the next swirling with shadow, starlight, and silver. The banished Luna was no longer alone, and the world outside the Valewood was beginning to unravel. The night of the blood moon arrived like destiny itself. For days, Valera had felt the energy building inside the Temple of Etherian. The air grew thicker, charged with ancient power. The glowing runes on the cracked walls pulsed brighter with every passing hour. The three wolves within her stirred restlessly, their voices overlapping in urgent whispers. Tonight, the seals will break. Become who you were born to be. Valera stood at the center of the great circular altar as the crimson moon rose high above the broken dome. Its blood-red light poured down like liquid fire, bathing her in an otherworldly glow. She wore nothing but the tattered remains of her festival gown, her midnight hair wild and tangled, her amber-gold eyes reflecting the moon's fierce light. Pain struck without warning. It began in her chest, a burning heat that spread through every vein like molten lava. Valera, dropping to her knees on the cold stone. The mate bond scar from Kadros's rejection throbbed violently, as if the goddess herself was tearing away the last chains that bound her power. Then the first seal shattered. Nyxaris awakened. A wave of pure darkness exploded outward from her body. Shadows coalesced around her, forming the massive silhouette of the Shadow Wolf. His voice, through her mind, deep and velvety. I am Nyxaris, keeper of secrets and master of the dark. Rise, vessel. Let the shadows serve you. Valera, as new sensations flooded her, she could feel every shadow in the temple, could command them. The darkness around her began to move at her will, tendrils of night wrapping gently around her bleeding feet, healing them instantly. She moved her hand and a cloak of living shadow formed over her shoulders, warm and protective. The pain intensified. The second seal broke with a burst of blinding light. Solvaris awakened. Celestial energy surged through her like a supernova. The second wolf appeared in her mind's eye, radiant, majestic, his fur woven from starlight and ancient runes, his voice like a heavenly bell. I am Solvaris, bearer of celestial magic and eternal light. Let the stars heal what was broken and empower what was weak. Valera's body lifted slightly off the ground as golden white light poured from her skin. Old scars faded, her muscles strengthened, her iridescent midnight hair lengthened and shimmered with inner starlight. She felt power, raw, beautiful, limitless magic, flowing through her fingertips. With a single thought, she summoned a sphere of moonlight that hovered above her palm, warm and comforting. Tears streamed down her face, but they were no longer tears of despair. The final seal, the strongest, cracked open under the full fury of the blood moon. Faloran awakened. Time itself seemed to slow. Silver threads of fate materialized around Valera, weaving through the air like living tapestries. The third wolf, ancient and wise, spoke with the weight of centuries. I am Faloran, weaver of destiny and voice of prophecy. You are the Tri-Soul, the queen who was always meant to rise. The full power of the three wolves merged inside her. Valera, not in pain, but in pure, overwhelming release. Her body transformed. Bones shifted and reformed with agonizing ecstasy. Fur as black as the void with iridescent threads rippling like captured starlight exploded across her form. She grew larger, more powerful, a magnificent wolf unlike any ever seen. Her eyes glowed with shifting colors, deep shadow purple, celestial gold, and prophetic silver. For the first time in her life, Valera shifted. She ran through the temple in her wolf form, powerful muscles rippling, claws striking sparks against the stone floor. She leaped onto the highest broken column and, ow! A sound so pure and commanding that the entire Valewood fell silent in reverence. The howl carried across the winds, a declaration to the world. The rejected Luna had awakened. When she shifted back to human form, the transformation was breathtaking. Valera now stood taller, her presence radiating ancient authority. Her beauty had deepened into something almost divine, skin glowing with subtle inner light, hair flowing like liquid night with living stars woven through it, eyes permanently holding faint traces of her three wolves. A faint aura of shadow, starlight, and silver fate surrounded her. She tested her new powers one by one. With Nyxaris, she dissolved into pure shadow and reappeared across the temple in an instant. With Solvaris, she healed a deep wound on her arm with nothing but a touch of moonlight. With Thaloran, she glimpsed a fragment of the future. King Kadros standing before her, kneeling, his proud head bowed in desperation. Valera stood at the center of the altar, reborn. "I am no longer weak," she whispered, her voice layered with the echoes of three ancient wolves. "I am Valera Nyxaris, the Tri-Soul, the Queen of Three Wolves." Far away, in the Ironfang Dominion, King Kadros Valor suddenly woke from a troubled sleep, clutching his chest. For one fleeting moment, he felt the shattered mate bond flare back to life, stronger, brighter, and infinitely more powerful than before. He did not yet understand what had changed, but the world would soon feel the difference. The banished Luna had awakened, and the reckoning was only beginning. In the days following the Blood Moon awakening, the Temple of Etherion became Valera's sanctuary and training ground. She spent long hours in meditation at the center of the great altar, learning to truly hear her three wolf souls. Their voices were no longer distant whispers. They were distinct personalities, ancient and powerful, each with their own wisdom and temperament. Nyxaris spoke first, his voice smooth and shadowy. "I am the unseen blade, the secret keeper, the darkness that protects what light cannot. To master me is to move without being seen, to strike without warning, and to hide your true strength until the moment is perfect." Valera practiced for hours. She learned to wrap herself in living shadows, becoming nearly invisible even under direct moonlight. She moved through the temple like a ghost, her footsteps completely silent. Once, she even managed to separate a portion of her shadow and send it scouting ahead, watching through its eyes as it explored the surrounding forest. Solvaris was brighter, more encouraging, voice warm like sunlight after winter. "I am the healer and the destroyer, the light that mends broken bones and the starfire that burns away corruption. Feel the celestial magic within you. It answers to compassion as much as to will." Under his guidance, Valera healed small animals she found injured in the Valewood. She learned to summon spheres of gentle moonlight that could close wounds and restore strength. She also discovered a more destructive side, channeling starfire into devastating blasts that could fell ancient trees in a single strike. The balance between healing and destruction fascinated her. Thaloran was the most solemn, his voice carrying the weight of countless centuries. "I am fate's weaver and prophecy's voice. I cannot show you every future, only the threads most likely to occur. Use this gift wisely, Queen. Knowledge without wisdom leads to ruin." Through him, Valera experienced brief visions, a kingdom in flames, a proud alpha king on his knees, and herself standing radiant at the center of a grand alliance. These glimpses left her breathless and determined. As her mastery grew, so did her confidence. Her body moved with supernatural grace. She could now shift forms fluidly, sometimes fully wolf, sometimes a striking hybrid form with wolf ears, claws, and glowing eyes, while retaining her humanoid shape. The aura of ancient magic around her grew stronger, making flowers bloom and shadows dance wherever she walked. One fateful afternoon, while practicing near the edge of the temple grounds, Valera heard desperate howls in the distance. A small group of exiled wolves, no more than 12 ragged survivors, was being hunted by a corrupted shadow beast pack. The exiles were weak, starving, and clearly banished from their own packs for various reasons. Among them was an elderly female with graying fur, a young mother protecting 2 cubs, and a scarred warrior who limped badly. Without hesitation, Valera shifted into her full wolf form and raced toward the battle. She arrived like a living legend. Shadows exploded outward as Nyxeris lent his power. She moved like darkness itself, tearing through 3 shadow beasts before they even realized she was there. Solveris's celestial fire burned away the corruption from the remaining creatures. Thaloran showed her exactly where to strike for maximum effect. The fight was swift and decisive. When the last corrupted beast fell, Valera shifted back to her humanoid form, radiating power and compassion. The exiled wolves stared at her in awe and terror. The elderly female was the first to speak, lowering her head in submission. What are you, Great One?" Valera's voice carried the layered echo of her 3 wolves. "I am Valera Nyxeris, the Tri-Soul, the one they called weak and banished. I am no longer broken, and neither shall you be if you choose to follow me." One by one, the exiles knelt, some in wolf form, some in human. They had nothing left to lose, and in Valera they saw something they had long given up on: hope. The young mother approached with her cubs. "They called you the Ghost Luna in the whispers that reach even the deepest parts of the Valewood. Is it true?" Valera smiled for the first time since her banishment, a small, fierce smile. "Then let them keep calling me that. For now." She shared the temple's healing spring and glowing fruits with her new followers. That night, around a carefully controlled fire, they told stories of their own banishments and hardships. Valera listened to everyone, her heart aching with shared pain. These were her first true companions. Word began to spread. Travelers and other exiles who glimpsed the glowing temple from afar carried tales of a mysterious, silver-eyed woman with 3 wolf spirits who saved the lost and wielded impossible magic. The Ghost Luna, they called her, the banished queen who rose from the shadows. The stories traveled far beyond the Valewood, carried on the wind and whispered in hidden corners of distant packs. In the Ironfang Dominion, rumors reached even the royal court. King Kadros Valor listened to a scout's report with a deep frown, his silver-gray eyes troubled. A woman with 3 wolves, powerful enough to defeat corrupted shadow beasts alone? He dismissed the scout, but the name Ghost Luna lingered in his mind, stirring something he could not yet name. Back at the Temple of Etherion, Valera stood on the highest broken tower, looking out over the Valewood with her 3 wolves manifested faintly beside her in spirit form. Her first followers trained below, growing stronger under her guidance. The Queen of 3 Wolves had begun to build her own destiny, and the world outside was starting to take notice. Darkness was no longer content to stay hidden. Across the eastern borders of the Ironfang Dominion, the sky tore open. Great, jagged rifts of swirling black void energy split the air above the border packs. From these wounds in reality poured hordes of nightmarish creatures, twisted abominations with no scent, no soul, and eyes like burning coals. They moved with unnatural speed, corroding the land itself as they advanced. The first attacks came without warning. Small border villages fell in hours. Howls of alarm rose into the night as entire packs fought desperately to protect their homes. Messengers raced toward the capital with bloodied fur and terror in their eyes. In the grand war hall of the Ironfang Dominion, King Kadros Valor received the news with a face like thunder. "Again?" he growled, slamming his fist on the war table. Maps scattered. His generals stepped back instinctively. A wounded scout knelt before him. "Your Majesty, the creatures are unlike anything we've faced. They dissolve flesh with their touch. Our warriors' claws pass through some of them as if they were smoke. 3 villages have already been lost." Kadros's silver-gray eyes burned with fury. He rose to his full, imposing height, his broad shoulders casting a long shadow. "Prepare the legions. I will lead the counterattack myself. No enemy threatens my dominion and lives." That night, under a clouded sky, King Kadros marched at the head of his finest warriors. His wolf form was massive and terrifying, a beast of pure iron-gray fur with fangs like daggers. Hundreds followed him, their howls shaking the trees. The battle that followed was brutal and chaotic. They met the Void Sovereign's forces at the shattered remains of the village of Blackthorn Hollow. The rifts had widened, spilling more horrors onto the land. Kadros roared a challenge and charged. He fought like the legend he was. His claws tore through shadow beasts, his powerful jaws crushed corrupted skulls. For a time, it seemed the Iron Fang warriors might turn the tide. Kadros' presence inspired his soldiers to fight beyond their limits. But the enemy was relentless. A massive rift beast, a colossal creature formed of pure void energy with dozens of whipping tentacles, emerged from the largest tear in the sky. It slammed into the heart of Kadros' formation. Warriors screamed as the creature's touch dissolved armor and flesh alike. Kadros leaped onto its back, tearing into it with savage fury, but every wound he inflicted seemed to heal almost instantly as more void energy poured in. "Hold the line!" he roared, his voice booming across the battlefield. Yet the losses mounted. Dozens of his best fighters fell. The young alpha of Blackthorn Hollow was swallowed whole by a rift. The elderly pack healer who had served Kadros' father was cut down protecting cubs. Blood soaked the ground. The air filled with the acrid stench of corrupted magic. By the time Kadros delivered the final blow to the rift beast, driving his claws deep into its core and channeling every ounce of his alpha power, the battle was already lost in spirit. His forces retreated in disarray, carrying their dead and wounded. That night, in a hastily erected command tent, King Kadros sat alone, staring into a flickering lantern. His body was covered in cuts and bruises that refused to heal quickly. The weight of command pressed heavily on him. One of his most trusted generals, an older warrior named Garrick, entered quietly. "We lost over 100 tonight, my king. The men are shaken. These creatures, they are not natural. The old shaman keeps muttering about the Void Sovereign, an enemy the moon goddess herself sealed away long ago." Kadros remained silent for a long moment. Then, almost against his will, he spoke the name that had haunted the edges of his mind for days. The Ghost Luna. The stories say she wields 3 wolf spirits, that she rose from banishment with impossible power. Could the old Trisoul legends be true? Garrick looked surprised. "The girl you banished? Surely not, your majesty. She was powerless." "Was she?" Kadros muttered, his voice low. "Or did I refuse to see what was right in front of me?" For the first time since the Festival of Moons, genuine regret flickered across the Alpha King's proud face. He remembered Valera's gentle eyes, her quiet strength, the way the mate bond had sung between them before he had silenced it with cruel words. He clenched his fists. "Send scouts deeper into the Vale Wood. I want to know everything about this Ghost Luna. If she is connected to the Trisoul prophecy, then the woman I rejected may be the key to stopping this darkness." As the king brooded, far away in the Temple of Etherian, Valera suddenly looked up from training her followers. Her 3 wolves stirred strongly within her. Faloran's voice echoed softly. "He begins to see. The proud king feels the first cracks in his armor." Valera's eyes glowed with shifting light. The board was set. The pieces were moving. And the game between the banished queen and the Alpha King was only just beginning. The call to action came sooner than Valera expected. A desperate young messenger, one of the few brave enough to venture near the Valewood, stumbled into the temple clearing, collapsing at her feet. He was barely conscious, his clothes torn and his skin marked with strange black veins of corruption. "Great Ghost Luna," he gasped. "A rift has opened near the village of Silverbrook. On the edge of the Vale Wood. The creatures, they're pouring out. Women and children are trapped. Please, if the stories are true, help us." Valera's 3 wolves stirred instantly. She felt their unified resolve. Without hesitation, she turned to her small group of followers. "Stay here and protect the temple. I will answer this call alone." In a flash of shadow and starlight, she shifted into her powerful hybrid form, elegant, deadly, and radiating ancient magic, and raced toward the village. The scene that greeted her was chaos. A massive rift had torn open in the sky above Silverbrook, a swirling vortex of pure void energy that pulsed like a living wound. Dozens of nightmarish creatures spilled forth, attacking homes, livestock, and fleeing villagers. The local pack warriors were overwhelmed, their howls of pain echoing across the fields. Valera did not hesitate. She descended upon the battlefield like a goddess of vengeance and salvation. Nyxaris struck first. Valera dissolved into living shadows, moving faster than the eye could follow. She reappeared behind a cluster of void creatures, her claws extended, tearing through them with lethal precision. Shadows rose at her command, wrapping around enemies and dragging them back into the darkness. Solvaris lent his celestial power next. Valera raised her hands and unleashed waves of purifying starfire. The light burned away corruption, healing wounded villagers even as it destroyed the enemy. A mother clutching her cubs watched in awe as Valera's magic closed deep gashes and restored strength. Thaloran guided her with prophetic insight. He showed her the weak points in the rift itself, the threads of fate that held it open. Valera fought her way to the center of the village, directly beneath the massive vortex. The rift beast guarding it was enormous, a towering mass of tentacles and void energy. It roared and lashed out, but Valera was no longer the powerless princess. She leaped high into the air, empowered by all 3 wolves. Her voice rang out with layered authority as she channeled their combined strength. "For the moon goddess and the innocent, close!" A brilliant pillar of shadow, starlight, and silver prophecy shot upward from her body into the rift. The vortex screamed. The ground shook. Valera poured every ounce of her tri-soul power into sealing the tear. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed the rift might overwhelm her. But she held firm. With a final, deafening crack, the rift sealed shut. The remaining creatures dissolved into harmless mist. Silence fell over the devastated but saved village. Valera stood in the center of the square, breathing heavily, her body glowing with residual magic. Villagers slowly emerged from hiding. They fell to their knees one by one, whispering in reverence. "The ghost Luna. She saved us. The Tri-Soul has returned." An elderly village elder approached cautiously, offering her a cloak of fine wool. "We thought we were doomed. You are a miracle, my lady. The stories did not do you justice." Valera accepted the cloak with grace. "I was once banished and called weak. Now I fight for those the powerful have forgotten. Spread the word. The Queen of 3 Wolves stands against the coming darkness." As she helped heal the wounded and shared what little knowledge she had about the Void Sovereign, word of her deeds spread like wildfire. Travelers carried the tale to neighboring territories. Bards began singing of the mysterious savior with 3 wolf spirits who closed a rift single-handedly. The ghost Luna was no longer a whispered rumor. She was becoming a legend. Far away in the Iron Fang Dominion, King Kadros Valor received the report in his war room. A scout knelt before him, voice filled with excitement and fear. "Your Majesty, the rift near Silverbrook has been closed." A mysterious woman with midnight hair and glowing eyes appeared. She wielded shadows, starfire, and fate magic. The villagers call her the Ghost Luna. She saved them all, alone. Kadros' silver-gray eyes narrowed. He paced the room, his mind racing. "Send 3 of our best scouts into the Valewood. I want this woman found. Observe her. Do not approach unless necessary. Report back everything. her appearance, her powers, her followers. If she is truly the tri-soul of legend. He trailed off, a storm of conflicting emotions crossing his face, hope, suspicion, and a deepening regret he refused to name. The scouts departed immediately, heading toward the heart of the Valewood, unaware that the savior they sought was the very woman their king had once banished in front of the entire realm. Back at the Temple of Etherion, as Valera rested after the battle, Thalarin's voice whispered softly, "They come seeking you, little queen. The king's eyes turn this way at last." Valera smiled faintly, her amber gold eyes glowing with quiet power. "Let them come." The ruined battlefield of Eldenmoor was a scar upon the land. Once a fertile valley, it now lay devastated after a brutal clash between Kadros's forces and a massive wave of void sovereign creatures. Broken weapons littered the ground. The earth was scorched black in places and soaked with blood in others. The air still carried the acrid stench of corrupted magic. King Kadros Valor fought at the front lines once again, his massive wolf form a blur of fury and power. But the enemy was adapting. They had learned his tactics. A coordinated ambush by 3 giant rift beasts nearly overwhelmed him and his remaining elite guard. Claws slashed, tentacles whipped through the air. Kadros roared in defiance, tearing through one beast, but another's strike sent him crashing into a cluster of shattered boulders. Pain exploded through his side as sharp bone fragments pierced his hide. For the first time in many years, the Alpha King felt the cold touch of mortality. His guards fought desperately to reach him, but they were pinned down. That was when she appeared. A figure cloaked in living shadows and starlight descended upon the battlefield like a vengeful moon spirit. Valera Nytheris had been tracking the rift activity when she sensed the battle. She had not come for him. She came for the innocent caught in the crossfire. But fate had other plans. Kadros looked up through bloodied eyes and froze. The woman standing before him was both achingly familiar and utterly transformed. Her midnight hair flowed with iridescent starlight. Her amber gold eyes glowed with shifting hues of shadow, celestial fire, and silver prophecy. An aura of immense power radiated from her, making the very air hum. She was no longer the quiet, uncertain princess he had rejected. She was magnificent, terrifying. "Valera," he rasped, his voice filled with shock and something deeper. She did not answer. With cold precision, Valera unleashed her power. Nyxaris's shadows erupted across the field, binding 2 of the rift beasts. Solvaris's celestial flames burned away their corruption. Thalarin guided her strikes with perfect accuracy. She moved like a dance of death and salvation, tearing through the enemy with a grace and strength that left Kadros stunned. One massive tentacle whipped toward the fallen king, aiming to deliver the killing blow. Valera was faster. She flashed between shadow and form, placing herself in front of Kadros. Her hand shot out, summoning a brilliant barrier of starlight and fate threads. The tentacle slammed against it and disintegrated. With a fierce cry, she channeled all 3 wolves and destroyed the final beast in a devastating explosion of combined magic. The battlefield fell silent except for the heavy breathing of the survivors. Kadros pushed himself up, staring at her in awe and disbelief. You saved me. After everything I did to you." Valera turned slowly. Her expression was cold, regal, and unreadable. The mate bond between them flared painfully, pulling them toward each other even as her eyes remained distant. She said nothing. Kadros took a painful step forward, his wounds still bleeding. "Valera, I was blind. The stories, the tri-soul, I didn't understand. Let me—" She raised a hand. Shadows coiled warningly around her fingers. Her voice, when it finally came, was layered with the echoes of her 3 ancient wolves, beautiful, powerful, and icy. You had your chance to speak at the Festival of Moons, King Kadros Valor. You chose rejection. You chose banishment. Pain flashed across Kadros's face. For the first time, the proud Alpha King looked truly broken. I was a fool. The Void Sovereign threatens everything. We need you. I need you. Valera's eyes softened for the briefest moment, a flicker of the old love she once held, before her expression hardened again. She turned away. As Kadros reached out desperately, she dissolved into pure shadow and starlight, vanishing into the night like a ghost. Only the faint scent of moonlight and wildflowers remained where she had stood. The surviving warriors stared in stunned silence. Their king knelt in the mud, staring at the place where Valera had been, his heart torn open wider than any physical wound. Far away, as Valera reappeared near the edge of the Valewood, her 3 wolves spoke gently in her mind. Nyxeris, well done. Let him feel the weight of his choices. Salveris, your compassion saved him, but do not give your heart so easily again. Phalerin, the threads are tightening. He will come seeking forgiveness, but true redemption must be earned. Valera looked up at the moon, her expression a mixture of strength and lingering sorrow. The paths had collided, but the journey was far from over. The return to the Ironfang Dominion was a somber one. King Kadros Valor rode at the head of his battered forces, his body aching from wounds both physical and far deeper. The image of Valera, transformed, powerful, and coldly magnificent, burned behind his eyes with every step. As soon as they reached the capital, he summoned his most trusted advisors, the royal shaman and the keepers of the ancient archives. The great war hall felt heavier than usual, the torchlight casting long, uneasy shadows. "Tell me everything," Kadros commanded, his voice rough. "About the Trisoul, about Valera Nyxeris. Leave nothing out." The old shaman, a frail woman named Elowin who had served 3 generations of kings, unrolled ancient scrolls with trembling hands. Her voice was grave as she read, "Once every 1,000 years, a Trisoul is born, one who carries 3 primal wolf spirits, Shadow, Celestial, and Fate. The legends say such a being is the bridge between the moon goddess and our world. They are destined to either save us from great darkness or become the instrument of our end. The House of Nyxeris has guarded this bloodline in secret for centuries." Kadros listened in silence as the full prophecy was revealed. The Crimson Eclipse birth, the hidden wolves, the potential for world-saving power. The shaman continued. "King Dravor concealed his daughter's nature out of fear. When you rejected her, you unknowingly cast out the one who may be our only hope against the Void Sovereign." The hall was deathly quiet. Kadros stared at the scrolls, his silver-gray eyes wide with dawning horror. The weight of what he had done crashed down upon him like an avalanche. He had called her weak. He had humiliated her before the entire realm. He had banished the one person the moon goddess had chosen for him, the one who now held the power to save them all. Guilt, raw and all-consuming, tore through the proud Alpha King. He dismissed everyone from the hall with a hoarse command and sank into his throne, head in his hands. Memories assaulted him without mercy. Valera's gentle smile during their secret conversations, the way she had looked at him with complete trust at the festival before he destroyed her. The pain in her eyes as he spoke those cruel words, the shattered mate bond that now screamed at him every night. "I was a fool," he whispered into the empty hall. "A blind, arrogant fool." For hours, Kadros sat alone, the guilt eating him alive. He replayed every interaction, every moment he could have chosen differently. The powerful king who had never bowed to anyone now felt the crushing weight of his own mistakes. But regret alone would not save his kingdom. The Void Sovereign's forces continued their attacks. Reports of new rifts and fallen villages poured in daily. His nobles were growing restless. Some whispered that the king's rejection of the Tri-Soul had angered the moon goddess and brought this darkness upon them. Kadros rose with renewed, desperate purpose. He summoned his most loyal scouts and spies. "Find her. Search every corner of the Valewood, every hidden path, every rumor of the ghost Luna. Do not harm her. Do not approach if she does not wish it. Simply observe and report. I must know where she is, how she fares, and if there is any chance she might forgive what I have done." As the scouts prepared to depart, Kadros met privately with General Garrick. "The kingdom is fracturing," the general warned. "The people need hope. They need their king to be strong." "Then I will give them strength," Kadros replied, though his voice carried new shadows. "But I will also right the greatest wrong of my reign. Valera Nytheris is the key to this war and to my soul." That night, alone in his chambers, Kadros stood at the window staring at the moon. The mate bond, though damaged, still pulled at him with painful intensity. "Valera, wherever you are," he whispered, "know that this king regrets with every breath. I will find you. I will beg if I must. Just survive until I can make this right." Unbeknownst to him, in the temple of Etherian, Valera felt a faint echo of his regret through the fractured bond. She closed her eyes, torn between the cold resolve her wolves encouraged and the lingering warmth in her heart. The king's search had begun, and with it, the slow, painful path toward redemption, or final heartbreak. The meeting took place under an uneasy truce at the ancient ruins of Moonfall Crossing, a once sacred site now lying in neutral territory between the Valewood and the Iron Fang Dominion. Valera arrived first, flanked by a small but fiercely loyal group of her followers. She stood tall on the cracked marble steps of the ruined pavilion, her midnight hair catching the moonlight like threads of starlight, her aura of shadow, celestial magic, and fate radiating quietly around her. She had agreed to this meeting only after days of internal debate and counsel from her three wolves. Nyxeris had warned her to remain guarded. Silveris urged compassion where it served the greater good. Thalarin reminded her that destiny often required painful steps. When King Kadros Valar arrived, the air between them crackled with raw, unresolved energy. He came alone, as requested, a sign of good faith. The powerful Alpha King looked exhausted yet determined, his usual commanding presence tempered by visible regret. His silver-gray eyes locked onto Valera immediately, drinking in her transformed glory with a mixture of awe, longing, and shame. For a long moment, neither spoke. The mate bond surged between them, painful, magnetic, and impossible to ignore. Kadros was the first to break the silence, his deep voice rough with emotion. "Valera, thank you for coming. You are extraordinary." She regarded him coldly, her glowing eyes unyielding. "Flattery will not erase what you did, King Kadros. Speak your purpose. The Void Sovereign does not wait for old wounds to heal." He stepped closer, stopping several paces away. The tension was thick enough to cut with claws. Enemies to lovers' sparks flew in every glance. Anger, lingering love, pride, and desperate need all warring in the space between them. Kadros swallowed his pride. "I know the full truth now. The Tri-Soul prophecy, your hidden power, my own arrogance and fear. I was manipulated and blinded, but that is no excuse. I hurt you in the worst possible way. I rejected the one the moon goddess chose for me." Valera's expression remained icy, but her hands clenched at her sides. The mate bond pulled at her relentlessly. Kadros continued, his voice growing raw. "My kingdom is fracturing. Villages fall daily. My people are dying. I need your help, Valera. The Tri-Soul power you carry may be our only chance to seal the rifts permanently and defeat the Void Sovereign." She let the silence stretch, making him wait. Her 3 wolves whispered encouragement in her mind. Finally, she spoke, her voice layered with ancient power. "You need me. After you cast me away like garbage before the entire realm, after you labeled me weak and unworthy, now you come begging because darkness threatens your precious throne." Kadros lowered his head, the proud Alpha King bending for the first time. His voice cracked with genuine remorse. "Yes, I am begging. Help me save our people, Valera. Help me make this right. I will give you whatever you ask. Lands, title, restitution. I will grovel if that is what you demand. Just, please, stand with me against this enemy." The word "please" from the ruthless king sent a shiver through her. The enemies to lovers' tension peaked. She could see the love he still carried for her burning in his eyes, mirrored painfully in her own heart. Valera circled him slowly, her presence commanding. "You will beg properly, Kadros Valor, on your knees, as I once stood broken before you." For a heartbeat, his pride flared. Then, with visible effort, the Alpha King dropped to one knee in the dirt before her, his head bowed. "I beg you, Valera Nytheris, Queen of 3 Wolves, help me protect our world. I was wrong, terribly, unforgivably wrong." The moment was electric. Valera felt the weight of destiny pressing down. After a long, tense pause, she finally nodded. "We will form an alliance, but know this: trust is not given freely. You have earned none from me. Our forces will fight together when necessary, but I will not share my full power or my plans until you prove yourself worthy. Betray me again, and the next time I save your life, I may choose not to." Kadros rose slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. The mate bond sang between them, desperate for connection, but both held back. They spent the next hours discussing strategy in clipped, careful tones, sharing intelligence about rift locations, planning joint operations, and dividing responsibilities. Every word was laced with tension. Every accidental brush of hands sent sparks flying. The pull to touch, to forgive, to reignite what was broken was almost overwhelming. Yet Valera kept her walls high, and Kadros remained painfully respectful. As dawn approached, they parted with a shaky alliance forged in necessity rather than trust. Valera disappeared into the shadows once more, her heart aching. Kadros watched her go, whispering to the wind, "I will earn your trust, my queen, no matter how long it takes." The alliance of the damned had begun, but whether it would save the world or destroy them both remained to be seen. The day of reckoning arrived with cataclysmic force. The Void Sovereign launched its greatest assault yet on the kingdom of Valkyrian, Valera's former home, and one of the last major strongholds resisting the darkness. The sky tore open with dozens of massive rifts above the capital city. Hordes of nightmare creatures poured forth, supported by colossal void titans that shook the earth with every step. King Kadros Valor had mobilized every available warrior. The alliance with Valera's forces had been activated. As the battle began, he fought at the front, his heart heavy with both duty and longing. Then she arrived. Valera Nytheris appeared on the battlefield like a living embodiment of the moon goddess. Her followers fought alongside Kadros's legions, but it was the Tri-Soul Queen herself who turned the tide. She and Kadros met in the chaos of combat near the central plaza, their eyes locked amid the bloodshed. "Together?" Kadros shouted over the roar of battle. Valera gave a sharp nod, her expression fierce. "For the realm, not for you." Side by side, the rejected mates fought with devastating synergy. Kadros's raw alpha power complemented Valera's ancient magic perfectly. He charged forward like a battering ram, creating openings. She followed with waves of shadow, starfire, and fate threads that destroyed entire groups of enemies. As the largest Void Titan emerged, a monstrous avatar of the Void Sovereign itself, Valera knew they needed everything. "Manifest," she commanded. For the first time in battle, her 3 wolves fully appeared. Nyxeris erupted in a storm of living darkness, a colossal shadow wolf that swallowed enemy forces whole and protected allies with impenetrable night. Solvaris blazed into existence as a radiant celestial wolf, his starfire burning away corruption across the entire battlefield and healing wounded warriors mid-fight. Falarin materialized as a majestic silver wolf wreathed in threads of destiny, guiding strikes with prophetic precision and weakening the Void Titan's defenses. The sight of the 3 massive spirit wolves fighting alongside their queen sent waves of hope and awe through the allied forces. The soldiers fought with renewed vigor, shouting, "The Tri-Soul Queen!" and "For the Ghost Luna!" Valera and Kadros pressed the attack together against the Titan. In the heat of battle, as they stood back to back, the fractured mate bond began to mend in flashes of golden light. During a brief lull, as the Titan reeled from a combined assault, revelations poured out. Kadros, speaking between strikes, "The prophecy, it said the Tri-Soul would complete the king's strength. I was too arrogant to see that you were always meant to stand beside me, not behind me." Valera channeled a massive blast of combined magic, her voice, "The bond was never just about power, Kadros. It was about trust, partnership. You broke that the day you rejected me." The mate bond flared brighter, ancient magic weaving between them. For a moment, old love and new respect shone through the anger. With one final coordinated strike, Kadros delivering a devastating physical blow, while Valera poured all 3 wolves' power into a sealing ritual, the massive Void Titans shattered. The remaining rifts began to close across the city. The battle was won, but at great cost. Many had fallen. The city lay in ruins. Yet they had survived. As the dust settled, Valera and Kadros stood together, exhausted but victorious. The 3 spirit wolves faded back into her, leaving her glowing with residual power. Kadros looked at her, his voice thick with emotion. "We are stronger together. The bond, it still lives. Let me prove I am worthy of it." Valera met his gaze, the enemies to lovers' tension stronger than ever. "One battle does not erase years of pain. But you fought well today, Kadros. The final confrontation is coming. We will face it side by side. For now." The final convergence had shown them both the truth of the prophecy. Their fated bond was the key. But the greatest test still awaited. The final confrontation unfolded at the shattered heart of the ancient Moonveil temples, the very place where Valera had first awakened. The Void Sovereign had gathered all its remaining power for one last, desperate assault. The sky tore wide open in a cataclysmic rift that threatened to swallow the entire continent. From this abyss emerged the true form of the enemy, a colossal, ever-shifting entity of pure nothingness and devouring hunger, its presence warping reality itself. Allied forces, Kadros's legions and Valera's growing army of the exiled and the faithful, stood ready. But everyone knew the battle's true outcome would rest on the shoulders of the Tri-Soul Queen. Valera and Kadros fought their way to the center of the chaos, once again standing side by side. The mate bond blazed between them like a golden lifeline amid the storm of darkness. The final battle was cataclysmic. Void creatures swarmed by the thousands. The ground split. The air screamed. Kadros fought like a man possessed, clearing paths for Valera while protecting her flanks with ferocious determination. His love and regret fueled him beyond his limits. Valera shone like a star in the void. She called upon her three wolves with full, unrestrained power. Nyxeris, Solvaris, and Thalarin manifested in their most majestic forms yet, three colossal spirit wolves circling her protectively. Together, they became a force of nature. Shadow, celestial light, and threads of fate wove into a devastating trinity of magic. Valyra rose into the air, her body glowing with overwhelming energy. Her voice, amplified by the three ancient souls, rang out across the battlefield. I am Valyra Nyxeris, the Tri-Soul, the rejected who rose, the queen who was never weak. For the moon goddess and every soul you have tried to devour, I reject you. She unleashed everything. A colossal vortex of combined power, living shadows that trapped the sovereign, purifying starfire that burned its essence, and silver fate threads that unraveled its very existence, slammed into the void sovereign. The entity roared in agony as reality itself fought back against it. Kadros watched in awe and fierce pride as the woman he had once banished became the savior of their world. With one final, earth-shaking cry, Valyra drove the full might of her tri-soul power into the heart of the enemy. The Void Sovereign shattered in an explosion of light and shadow. The massive rift sealed with a thunderous boom. The remaining creatures dissolved into harmless mist. Silence fell. The war was over. As the dust and magic settled, the surviving warriors cheered. The name Queen Valyra echoed across the battlefield. In the aftermath, before the gathered armies and the surviving leaders of the realm, King Kadros Valor did what no one expected. The proud Alpha King walked slowly to the center of the field, where Valyra stood radiant and exhausted. He dropped to both knees before her in front of everyone, his generals, her followers, and the people of Valkyrian. His voice rang out, clear and unwavering, filled with raw emotion. Valyra Nyxeris, Queen of Three Wolves, Tri-Soul of the Moon Goddess. I, King Kadros Valor, publicly beg for your mercy. I was blind and cruel. I rejected the greatest gift the goddess ever gave me. I beg for forgiveness. I beg for a second chance to prove I can be the mate and partner you deserve. Rule with me. Let me spend the rest of my life earning back your trust and love. The entire battlefield held its breath. Valyra looked down at the kneeling king. Tears glistened in her amber gold eyes. The mate bond sang powerfully between them. For a long moment, the possibility of reconciliation hung in the air. Then she spoke, her voice gentle but firm, layered with the wisdom of her three wolves. I forgive you, Kadros. The goddess teaches mercy. But forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. I have claimed my full power and my destiny. Today, I claim the throne of Valkyrian and the fractured kingdoms as my own. I will rule alone, as the Queen of Three Wolves, the protector of the weak and the banished. You may prove yourself as an ally, but my throne, my heart, and my reign will be mine alone for now. A stunned silence followed. Then thunderous cheers erupted from her followers and many in the crowd who had suffered under old powers. Kadros remained on his knees, head bowed in acceptance, though his eyes shone with determination and love. Then I will wait, and I will serve, until you deem me worthy. Valyra extended her hand. He took it, rising to stand beside her, not as her king, but as a humbled ally and fated mate who still hoped for more. In the days that followed, Valyra was crowned Queen of the United Realms. She ruled with wisdom, strength, and compassion, her three wolves ever at her side. The land began to heal. Exiles found new homes. The balance between shadow, light, and fate was restored. And though she ruled alone, the golden thread of the mate bond remained. A quiet promise that some stories, even after the greatest of betrayals, may yet find their way toward healing. The rejected Luna had become the legendary queen, and the Alpha King who once banished her now knelt at her feet, forever changed. Months had passed since the defeat of the Void Sovereign. The kingdom of Valkyrian, now the heart of the newly united Moonvale realms, flourished under Queen Valera Nytheris's rule. The temples had been restored, glowing with gentle celestial light. The forests bloomed with renewed life. Exiled wolves and banished souls found sanctuary within her borders. Her 3 wolves, Nyxeris, Solveris, and Thaloran, were no longer hidden secrets, but revered guardians, often manifesting as protective spirits during important ceremonies. On a quiet evening bathed in the soft silver light of a gentle full moon, Queen Valera sat upon her newly forged throne in the Grand Hall of Aetherion. The throne was carved from moonstone and ancient ironwood, inlaid with symbols of shadow, starlight, and fate. She wore a regal gown of midnight silk that shimmered with iridescent threads, her crown a delicate circlet of silver and glowing runes. She looked every inch the powerful, wise, and compassionate ruler she had become. Yet peace did not mean the past had been forgotten. King Kadros Valor stood before her once again, not as a conqueror or equal, but as a humbled suitor. He had visited many times over the months, each time offering gifts, strategic alliances, and public declarations of devotion. Tonight was no different. He knelt before her throne, head bowed low, his once imposing frame carrying the quiet weight of persistent regret. "My queen, I come before you again. The realms prosper under your rule, as they always should have. I have spent these months proving my loyalty, fighting threats at your borders, sending resources to rebuild what was lost, and publicly acknowledging my past mistakes before my people. I beg you once more, grant me mercy. Grant me a second chance to be the mate you deserve. Let me stand beside you, not as a king, but as your partner and protector." The court watched in hushed silence. The mate bond between them still shimmered faintly in the air, a golden thread of possibility. Valera looked down at him, her amber gold eyes calm but resolute. The 3 wolves within her stirred, offering quiet strength. "You have proven yourself a valuable ally, Kadros, and for that, I am grateful. The realms owe you thanks for your service. But my throne, my heart, and my trust remain mine alone for now. I will not bind myself to someone who once cast me aside so easily. Continue to serve the people. Prove yourself over time. Perhaps one day the goddess will guide us toward forgiveness, but today is not that day." Kadros remained kneeling, accepting her words with a bowed head, though pain and determination burned in his eyes. He rose slowly, offered a deep bow, and left the hall with quiet dignity, still begging, still hoping. As the court dispersed, another figure approached. King Dravor Nytheris, Valera's father, stepped forward, older and frailer than she remembered. He had come seeking an audience weeks earlier and had finally been granted one.
He knelt before his daughter, tears in his eyes. "Valera, my child, I beg your forgiveness. I was the one who sealed your wolves at birth. I was terrified of the power I could not control, terrified that the Trisoul prophecy would bring ruin instead of salvation. I hid you. I failed to protect you. When Kadros banished you, I remained silent out of fear. I was wrong. Please, forgive your father."
The hall grew deathly quiet. Valera felt a sharp pang in her chest. The old wound, the loneliness of her childhood, the years of feeling broken, the banishment she had endured alone, rose to the surface. Her 3 wolves growled softly in her mind, protective of their vessel. She rose from her throne and approached her father, but did not offer her hand. "I understand why you did it," she said, her voice carrying both pain and strength. "Fear drove you, just as pride drove Kadros. But understanding is not forgiveness. You sealed away the very essence of who I was because you could not trust me to control it. You watched as I was rejected and banished, and you said nothing. That silence broke something in me that even my wolves cannot fully heal. I rule now with compassion for my people, but I will not grant forgiveness where trust was so thoroughly shattered. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. Return to your lands, Father. Live with the choices we all must carry. King Dravor lowered his head, tears falling freely. He rose and left without another word, a broken man. Valera returned to her throne and looked out over the moonlit hall. Her 3 wolves manifested briefly beside her, Nyxaris in shadow, Solvaris in starlight, Thalarin in silver threads, offering silent comfort. She had claimed her power. She had claimed her throne. She ruled alone, strong and radiant. And though the mate bond and old familial ties still pulled at her heart, Queen Valera Nytheris, the Tri-Soul, the Ghost Luna, the Queen of 3 Wolves, had learned the greatest lesson of all. True strength sometimes means choosing yourself first. Thank you for listening to The Alpha King Banished the Rejected Luna until her triple soul wolves awakened and made him beg for mercy. This story was written as a passionate tribute to the werewolf shifter romance genre, full of rejection, awakening, epic power, enemies to lovers tension, and a strong heroine who chooses herself first. Valera's journey from a silenced, weak princess to the powerful queen of 3 wolves is a reminder that our greatest strength often lies in what others once feared or rejected. To everyone who felt the pain of Valera's banishment, cheered during her awakening, and held their breath during the final battles, thank you. Your support makes these stories possible. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, comment your favorite moment. Did you love the triple wolves manifesting, the kneeling scene, or the ending? Please subscribe for more werewolf shifter romances, rejected mate stories, and strong heroine fantasies. Until the next full moon, stay wild, stay strong, and never let anyone convince you that you are weak. The end.